Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of In Conversation by a Coach. Today in conversation, our guest is Mr. A. Anandha Padmanabhan, Senior Fund Manager Equity with PGIM India Asset Management. Hi Ananda, welcome to Advisor Coach and welcome to In Conversation.
Good morning, Suren. Thanks for having me over.
By the, by the way, our viewers, by the time we're recording this podcast, it's 9:30 a.m. in Mumbai in the morning. And I'm very glad that Ananda could make it to office so early. So thank you, Ananda. I think the Mumbai traffic was kind to you
Yeah,
today.
the traffic gods were kind on everyone today.
So Ananda, we have a lot of questions for you today. But before we jump into them, if you could take our viewers through in terms of your investment management journey, your experience, and also believe that you manage quite a few funds at PGIM India Asset Management. Which funds are those? Also, if you could just highlight.
Correct. So my investment management journey started at Canara Robeco. I started as a equity research analyst covering healthcare sector in 2010. Over a period of time, I have looked at multiple sectors, but healthcare has been one sector that has been close to my heart, and that's been some sector that I have been consistently looking at. I joined PGIM in 2019 again as a senior equity research analyst, and over a period of time, I progressed through the organization. And as of today, I am a senior fund manager at PGIM. I manage the flexi cap fund, the large cap fund, the healthcare fund, and the equity savings fund.
Sure, sure, sure. So today specifically, we're going to be diving deep with you in the healthcare space, pharma, healthcare, diagnostic, etc. Right? So do you believe, or at least I believe, that we are quite underpenetrated as far as this overall theme and sector is concerned,
Correct.
right? So what do you believe is the reasons behind it? What do you believe is the growth trajectory ahead? And what do you believe is the overall size as well of this sector? Because we do have a lot of unorganized players as well,
Correct. Correct.
in this sector, rather than having more heavier weights in an organized manner. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So there are multiple ways to cut the overall healthcare market and the size of the opportunity. There is first way is to cut is the manufacturing part and the services part. The manufacturing part will involve the pharmaceuticals, API on the pharmaceutical side or domestic formulation side. On the formulation side, you have domestic formulations and export formulations. And if you look at domestic formulations as a market, it would be close to 2.25 to 2.5 lakh crore
Hmm.
as per the data. And if you look at compare the size of this market in terms of volume, India would be the third largest formulation market globally. In terms of value, India would be the 14th largest globally. So that speaks volumes about how affordable at least the our on the pharmaceutical side or the domestic formulation side, how affordable the industry is. And this is one industry where I would say that it is reasonably well penetrated. But having said that, what probably needs to improve here is the perception of or the consistency of quality across say manufacturers. So this is something that the government has been working on making the manufacturing practices of the regulatory oversight a lot more stringent than what they were in the past. And this is one place where we need to improve. On the services side, if you look at the healthcare delivery market, if you look at a couple of reports, the size is close to anywhere between 7.5 to 8 lakh crores. Uh, and it is an industry that is going at 10 to 12% CAGR, and 70 to 75% would be inpatient hospital services. So if you have to put roughly the size of the hospital market in India, it will be close to 5.5 lakh crore.
Mm.
Uh, so this is a market that is relatively fragmented. With if you look at the large organized private hospital chains, they contribute close to 20% of the market. These are all rough cut numbers based
Sure,
on
of course. Yes. Yeah.
that come across. Uh, Uh, Again, if you look at the on the if you go back to the manufacturing side on the export side, manufacturing export. One is the generic export, other is the specialty export.
Yeah.
On the generic export, India contributes by terms of volumes. If you look at a market like US, 50% of the generic drugs by volume that comes to US comes from India. So it's a relatively dominant player when it comes to generic drugs. When it comes to patented drugs or specialty drugs, India plays a very limited role. There are very limited innovative drugs that come out of India. Of late, there have been some companies who have been able to make some headway into launching some innovation drugs or innovative drugs in regulated markets like US and Europe, but we have a lot of room to cover. Where India does play a significant role would be CRDMO side, so custom research, development, and manufacturing operation, wherein Indian companies work closely with global innovators to help them in the overall innovation process, drug innovation process. Here, India would be the fourth largest player globally. So the top three being US, Europe, and China. But while we are the fourth largest player, if I just compare with some the size of the Indian CRDMO industry with China, we are at least one fifth or we are just one fifth of the size of what the Chinese CRDMO industry
I
is.
see.
So that's where there is a lot of scope for growth on this side. And again, on the diagnostic side, this is also a reasonably fast-growing market, which is growing at close to 10 to 12%. But here again, the organized diagnostic companies would have just about 20 odd percent market share. So this is again one place where there is a lot of scope for market shifting from unorganized to organized.
Sure. So do you believe in the future that, the ratio between the organized and the unorganized sector, specifically in the space we're talking about, it could probably tilt more towards the organized sector, and as see we sell ourselves as the world medical hub, correct?
Correct.
But we haven't seen the medical tourism really going up in our country, and that's quite a not a good thing, to be honest, because that also has its multiple other positive effects for the economy as well. So till the time we don't see a more structured processes going into this particular sector and theme, wherein more organized players are coming in, which are putting far more capital on bet in terms of the growth, the research, the processes required, the quality, which you mentioned very importantly. What do you believe on that? Why are we not there yet? What's holding
Sure.
us back?
So I agree with you that the unorganized to organized theme, shift is a theme that is true obviously across multiple sectors, including the healthcare sector, and that is something that you can see if you look at any of the subsegments within the healthcare
Mm,
sector. So, for example, when I spoke about domestic formulations, if you take the top 25 domestic formulation companies and see how their market share has progressed in the past 5-10 years, you will find that year on year, every year, the top 25 players have increased their market share within the domestic formulations market.
mm,
Same would be the case for the organized diagnostic chain or corporate hospital chains. One part obviously is that the front end organized players, they are able to bring a consistency in terms of quality and the healthcare delivery. They also have better access to capital, which enables them to expand at a faster pace than what a unorganized or a standalone player would be. So these are the structural tailwinds that should be there for the healthcare industry. Now coming to medical tourism, the way I see it, India is already a credible player when it comes to medical tourism, but it is more on the value travel or value medical tourism side. So if you took in terms of the size of India as a medical tourism hub, so there are a couple of studies which put out the data. So India would be the 10th largest in the medical tourism index. This is an index which has around 46 odd destinations. Out of those
yeah.
46 odd medical tourism destinations, India would be the 10th largest. Obviously, there is a lot of room to grow. But this at least gives there are some core strength that India has to offer. One obviously being cost effective and high quality tertiary care, especially in areas like cardiac surgery, orthopedics, oncology. So in these areas, there is a clear preference for India as a medical tourism hub, but that is more from a affordability side. So across multiple procedures, if you look at the cost of those medical procedures in India versus any of the developed markets, the cost would be 1/10.
Sure.
Obviously, so India has all the right ingredients. What India lacks is that India has the healthcare ecosystem in India is highly fragmented.
Mm.
And the other issue is that the quality standards are uneven. So in the sense that you cannot be assured of the same quality care when you move from one destination to another or one hospital to other. So that is something that the industry needs to improve on. And obviously, the finer aspects like a better branding, having a establishing a particular hub as a medical tourism or branding it as a medical tourism and enabling that you're able to channelize the entire flow of patients to that hub, make visa processes far more easier. If the government is able to do all those things, then obviously there will be a clear shift wherein India can move up from being the 10th in the medical tourism index to probably a little higher than that.
Sure, sure, sure. If you could also comment, because I understand, the medical or the healthcare, inflation is almost about 13 to 14% in India.
Correct.
So it is actually becoming very unaffordable for a large part of the people. Correct. So first question is, why is the inflation so high when we talk about this particular theme and sector? And do you see that as an opportunity for the growth to happen further? Because when we look at healthcare insurances as well, you know, um, people hardly pay any attention to that, right? When I talk to people around me, they are having very small, they're quite confined and happy with the health insurance which they have from their organization where they work with, or if they are working by themselves, they have very chota sa, healthcare insurance. So where do you believe, this is heading towards? Is this an opportunity you believe?
So I obviously so this so one obviously one key part of healthcare as an industry is that the demand is inelastic.
Mm,
So
of course.
irrespective of whether it's we are in a upcycle, we are in a down cycle, the economy is in a upturn or a downturn, there is a recession or not, the overall healthcare spend continues to follow the same trajectory. It does not get necessarily impacted by the how the broader economic
Absolutely.
cycles are happening. So that obviously, so this is one of those industries where there is a superior pricing power in terms of the company or the player who is providing healthcare. So if you look at if I have to give an example of domestic formulation, so domestic formulations, the industry growth is anywhere between say 8 to 10%,
Hmm.
if you look over a longer period of time. But if you look what has been the kind of price hikes that companies have been taking on a consistent basis, they have been, if you look at the contribution of price increases to this 8 to 10% kind of growth, it has been anywhere between 4 to 6%. So this is an industry where on a consistent basis, year on year, every year, domestic formulations players are able to take at a portfolio level, they are able to take 4 to 6% kind of price hikes. If I look at hospitals, again, so there is while the ARPOB or the average revenue per operating bed of hospitals, if I look at the last 5 6 years, average would be close to 6 odd %.
Hmm.
But if I have to look at the inflation that people see in the medical insurance premium, that is close to the 10 12% number that we see.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, this is obviously a dual-edged sword in the sense that in case this goes at the same stage and healthcare becomes unaffordable, then you have a risk of a good chunk of population being unable to pay. As a result of it, that becomes a bottleneck to the industry growth.
Mm,
At the other end, there is the across the board you are seeing a stable growth across the industry. Implies that there is a consistent demand, and while the healthcare inflation is going at a faster pace, there are still people are still, at least there are multiple avenues or ways and means by which people are able to address their healthcare needs. What obviously needs to happen from a longer term perspective to have this entire flywheel running would be that India as a market today is significantly out of pocket when it comes to medical expenses. That
mm,
seems to be, that is something that needs to change over a longer period of time. That could be
mm,
through government schemes for the lower strata of the population, and obviously through higher penetration of medical insurance for say mid and high income group. And that is something that the government has been trying to address all this time, in the sense that there is always a uh, uh, there is there is always a difference of opinion if you talk to the health insurance companies and the hospital companies in terms of
mm.
whether or not the healthcare is affordable, or whether hospitals are overcharging, or medical insurance companies, they are not, they are squeezing it, they are squeezing the hospitals too much than what they can do. So there seems to be, the government has actively got involved in this. They are trying to create a balance wherein at one end our cost of healthcare stays affordable, at the other end the out of pocket expenses that that contribute a larger chunk of the healthcare spend today, that moves to an insurance or to a government supported scheme, which enables that the affordability does not get significantly impacted.
Sure, sure. Now, talking about the most favorite topic going around for at least for the last about over a year and a half, the Trump
Correct.
tariffs.
Correct.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
so, so, how do you believe the Trump tariffs have affected this particular sector and theme in a broader sense? Because what I hear is also, generic drugs of August 2028 onwards, 100%, tariffs will be levied on companies. Uh, so that is something also which is being discussed and heard. That's number one. And number two also is that when we even talk about our APIs, when we say that we're a generic drug creator,
Hmm.
but all our almost I would say about 70 to 80% of our APIs are imported,
Correct.
correct? And that's quite a, I would say a reason not to be really cheering about. And also when you look at all the, the infrastructure which we require for diagnostics, etc., most of that is actually imported as well. And
Correct.
neither I think we have spent much on the biotechnology side.
Correct.
So my question to you is, when we're discussing about healthcare, we talk about pharma, we talk about diagnostic. Of course, we have a long way to go. We have huge inflation catching up on the sector. We have a private company, organized, unorganized. But so sometimes what happens is there is also a potential in the sea in the theme and the sector when there is a mess and chaos. Correct?
Correct.
Because that's the place where all the action is happening. So what do you have to say around, you know, all this stuff?
So, Trump tariff, obviously, in case it gets implemented in the way that is spoken about today by President Trump, obviously it would be a disruptive, it would have a disruptive impact on the
Hmm.
overall generic Indian generic formulations industry. Uh, but there are some ground realities that one needs to look at. One part obviously is that while if you look at across companies and you look at the percentage of the GDP that is being spent on healthcare, US would rank on the top. It is way
Hmm.
ahead of most of the countries, and
Absolutely.
that
It's
is
our main market.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one thing that they are the US as a country is very conscious about, and that is something that they are trying to bring under control.
Hmm.
The other part is that, so how to bring it under control is to make the drugs more affordable. How to make it
Hmm.
more affordable? It has to come from a destination where the cost of manufacturing is relatively more competitive. Now, if you look at US as a destination for manufacturing of generic drugs, And if you compare it with the cost of manufacturing the same drugs in India, if the manufacturing shift from India to US, depending on the complexity of the drug, the kind of whether it's high volume or low volume product, number of steps involved, the cost of manufacturing will go up anywhere between 2x to 4x
Hmm.
easily.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, the other way of looking at is that can industries are Indian generic companies making super normal gross margins as a result of it, even by manufacturing in US, they'll be able to afford it. That's not the
Mm.
case. If you look
Mm.
at most of these companies, they are working with anywhere between 50 to 60% gross margins. If you take into account the other operating expenses and the spend on R&D that they need to do to ensure that they're able to consistently have a consistent pipeline of drugs, then they're at an EBITDA level, they are doing anywhere between 20 odd percent. So cost of manufacturing going up by 2x or 3x is not something that this industry can absorb. And the only way this can happen is that there is a sharp hike in the price of drugs. This is something that the US cannot afford. What can happen is that there are some part of or some kind of generic formulations which are typically very high realization, which are very complex, wherein the relative cost differential between India and US is relatively lower. A small portion can happen in US, but for the large scale shift happening from India to US of the manufacturing of generic drugs, I don't think that is economically feasible. So from that perspective, at this point in time, I'm of the view that this would be uh, 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 more of a noise at this stage or a positioning at this stage, but it is not something that can actually happen and that can have the what the President Trump is talking about. For that to happen at the industry-wide scale, it's a very low probability event, in my opinion, at this point in time.
Sure.
The second question was about dependency on, say, China or any of the other countries when it comes to raw materials,
Mm. Mm.
APIs, or even on the diagnostic side or even the biotech side. So this is something that many countries have built over a period of time. India
Mm.
is probably waking up late to this game. So to that extent, it will have to work harder. Government on its part has rolled out multiple schemes like production linked incentives, subsidies, or some protection in terms of tariff to ensure that at least at a cost of manufacturing or a cost of setting up this facility, India is relatively more competitive or Indian players are relatively more competitive to set it up. More from a longer term perspective, one has to keep in mind that when the size of the industry or the size of the domestic demand in India, for example, if I have to take a look of diagnostic industry, if diagnostic industries reaches a size and scale in India where it becomes very feasible that you have a facility set up in India and that facility caters to the domestic needs, then automatically you will have global players or domestic players coming up and setting up facilities to meet those needs.
Mm. Mm.
Those thing that thing will happen. We have seen that happening in multiple other countries where the
Mm.
size of the market grew to such a level that catering to that market, setting up a facility in that market to cater to that market became very feasible. Then obviously you started having domestic local manufacturing happening there. That is something that can happen, but obviously government on its part has made a small push in terms of trying to create an ecosystem, talking about creating hubs for manufacturing of medical devices, creating a PLI scheme for medical devices, for APIs. Some of these have already have taken off there in the first or second year of their manufacturing journey, and we are seeing a reasonably good progress. Uh, Formulation companies, if I have to specifically talk about API, what they have done is that in the last, say, 5 or 7 years, pre-COVID and post-COVID, there have been multiple instances of disruption of supply. So what these companies have done is that they have tried to develop tier two suppliers in the sense that there will be some local supplier who may not be that cost competitive, but these companies ensure that they take at least some small portion of the requirement from this supplier so that whenever there is a disruption, even at a higher cost, you're able to get access to
Sure.
APIs. So these
Sure.
are the measures that are happening, but I am of the view that as the size of this industry grows, automatically you will have more and more local manufacturing companies. to support this industry.
So as a sector specialist, since you've been watching this sector and for a very, very long time, do you believe these are great potential places for an investor to be in currently? Because we have woken up by a jerk, to be honest, right? And a lot of reactive response is happening towards it, and hence that becomes an opportunity. So if you also could link this, since you manage the healthcare fund, PGIM India Healthcare Fund,
Hmm.
how do you manage and utilize these opportunities within your portfolio, correct creation? If you could also let our viewers know on that, please.
Sure. So, one of the key differentiating factors when we launched our fund, this is something that we have been consistently communicating. And even prior to that, if you look at the healthcare allocation of our other schemes, you'll find that the services part of healthcare, especially the hospital part of healthcare, is something that we always were very vocal about that. This is a far more exciting space at this stage. There are multiple reasons for that. Obviously, post-COVID, the awareness about healthcare went up. The balance sheet of most of the hospitals improved drastically. Across the board, you could see a clear preference for organized healthcare, penetration of health insurance went up. As a result of which, the hospitals saw a very clear tailwind, or the
Hmm.
services part of healthcare saw a very clear tailwind. And this is something that we always communicated that while if you look at the BSE healthcare index, 70% of the 70 roughly 70% of the weightage comes from formulations, be it domestic or export formulations, and the services part have just about 25 to 30 odd percent contribution. But if you look at the overall healthcare opportunity, it's the other way around in the sense that the services part is as big, if not bigger, than the manufacturing part of healthcare. And this is where you actually could find companies which are growing at a much faster pace. And this is one key differentiating factor about our healthcare fund.
Right,
And
right.
that is something that has helped in the way the fund has performed. Apart from that, we also feel that there are very broad-based opportunities in the diagnostic space, CRO, CDMO space. And on the manufacturing side, our preference for domestic formulations over export formulations was a key differentiator of this fund. Because we are of the view that the export formulations, which is essentially US-centric business, is a relatively cyclical business where you have to time the cycles. And we were at least in the last 2 years, we were at the wrong end of the cycle. And these news flows related to tariffs meant that there are some increased risk to this structural risk that one needs to factor in while valuing these companies. And to that extent, we find the risk return more favorable on the domestic formulation and the formulation side of the business. So that was the clear differentiation of the fund. The fund focuses on more bottom-up stock picking, uh, being invested over a longer period of time. So it runs a relatively low churn portfolio, focuses more towards sustainable growth opportunities, and those are what has helped the fund to do well since launch.
Sure, sure, sure. How old this fund is now?
We launched the fund in December 2024, so it's
Hmm.
almost year and a half, or little over year and a half.
Right, right, right. Sure. Through this in conversation, Ananda, what message would you like to give to all the viewers listening to you, right? Particularly about the healthcare, diagnostic, and of course, pharma, overall as a sector, let's say, right? If I were to broaden
Yeah,
it up.
the way I would put is that healthcare should not be just looked at as one theme that
Yeah,
people look at every once in a while.
yeah,
The key differentiating part is that healthcare is not merely just one, say, inelastic or defensive kind of a sector. Healthcare involves multiple sub-themes. There is the domestic formulations part, there is the hospital services part, there is diagnostic part, there are
absolutely.
CRO, CDMO. So there are multiple different sub-segments. Each sub-segments have its own drivers. So at any given point of time, there are multiple bottom-up opportunities to look at in this sector, and this should be looked as a more structural opportunity rather than more like a thematic opportunity that one needs to look at every once in a while if the risk returns are favorable.
Sure.
The other part one needs to keep in mind is that this is one sector where bottom-up stock picking is even more relevant, given the fact that if you look at the indices, in the way the index are structured, if you look at the weightage of companies, it is not attuned to the kind of opportunities that are there in the sector. So this
Yeah,
is
that's a very good point. Yeah.
one should go for a more actively managed fund rather than a ETF, because this is a sector where bottom-up stock picking can make a clear differentiation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is obviously these are structural industry in the sense that there are clear long-term drivers like say
Mm.
rising household income, aging demographic, lifestyle changes, uh, uh, increasing awareness about healthcare, increasing penetration about healthcare. And this obviously I missed out saying that in the to your earlier question, that one other differentiating part about our fund was that this fund, it all apart from obviously having exposure to healthcare, it also have exposures to allied themes of healthcare. Say, for example,
Mm.
medical insurance as a theme is one of the health enabling factors in healthcare, which
Mm.
has exposure to companies which are in the business of medical insurance. Similarly, while you spoke about API, so there are say intermediates or companies which manufacture raw materials for API companies
Sure.
be
Sure.
classified as chemicals, but here again the healthcare theme is a key enabling factor. So it also has exposure to such other sub-themes or adjacencies which are very much related to the healthcare. So this is the way one should look at it. It's a very broad-based sector, multiple sub-themes, different drivers for each sub-theme, and
Mm.
it's
Mm.
like a structural multi-year growth opportunity that one should look.
Mm. Sure, sure. So having said that, you certainly say that healthcare sector team, all what we spoke about, definitely finds a space in a investor's portfolio allocation, more from an active perspective and also for a long-term perspective in terms of a good wealth creation tool.
Correct.
Wonderful, wonderful, great, fantastic. So, well, for our viewers, this is Mr. A. Ananda Padmanabhan, a Senior Fund Manager, Equity with PGIM India Asset Management. I think we had a great chat today, diving deep into what healthcare diagnostic and pharma sector brings for India, what are the challenges and what we as a country are doing. And of course, we did hear about PGIM India Healthcare Fund, which is managed by Ananda himself. Ananda, thank you very much for joining in and taking our time to take our viewers through the entire sector and the theme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, it was pleasure interacting with you.
My pleasure. Our pleasure.